and gentlemen, welcome to Retro Warriors episode 478. Woo! As always, I'm your host, Justin Baker, and as always, I'm joined by a non-viable human, Andrew Derry.
I tried to do a more Saturn woo this episode.
That sounded very Saturn. I wonder how many people were immediately fooled by that woo, and they were like, oh, Saturn is back. Because they forgot we record 2 episodes at a time, which means you're filling in for him twice.
Yeah, that's true.
Which means we've got 3 episodes in a row with you on it.
I'm the new Saturn. We're phasing him out. He's the old thing. You're bringing in a guy that has no classic video game knowledge. Yeah.
Not your wheelhouse at all, but you're going to do it anyway.
I'm the opposite of an encyclopedia. Just
what is the opposite of encyclopedia?
Nothing.
Like a knock joke book?
I think
would that be?
Maybe it's just like a book that has misinformation.
Maybe like a doorstop?
Yeah, a doorstop is the opposite of a book.
We fucking did it. We figured it the fuck out. So it's our second show of the night.
Yeah.
Andrew is here is for housekeeping. Saturn still has COVID because he had it 2 hours ago when we did the last episode.
Right.
And so he has it now.
Wait, he's not
presumably. No, man, I don't know. Why don't you message him right now and just say, are you better? And then don't say anything else.
Yeah.
My week. We talked about it on the after party in 477. I had been irritated at the pricing model and monetization model of Sins of a Solar Empire 2, despite being conceptually excited for the game because I very much enjoyed the first Sins game. And I had in my head been like, oh, it's only $40. I'm going to buy it, and then got annoyed. But we talked about that.
Yeah.
But I had in my head been like, all right, I'm going to play a new RTS today. And so I was all jazzed up for a new RTS. And I didn't get one, and I felt, betrayed.
Yeah.
And so I was like, all right, what RTS can I buy that doesn't have a bunch of extra fucking shit, and it's just the game, and I can just buy the goddamn thing and play it. And so I picked up Age of Empires 4.
Oh, nice. I also like that you just said you like Sins.
I love Sins. I've never gotten into the AoE games. I know AoE 2 is kind of a big classic in the genre. I missed out on that one entirely.
Oh.
And they were just kind of different enough from like really boilerplate RTS games that I never, because the whole thing is that you're going through the different like ages, sort of thing.
Age of Empires was a big thing in my house. My dad, my brother, and I all played it.
I did not, and I own AoE 2 Definitive, but it's kind of like so much content, and I really like some of the modern features AoE 4 has, like shift queuing up multiple commands and stuff, and setting patrols and things. I like that a lot. And so I was like, well, I'll put some time into learning AoE 4 because it reviewed really well. I think there is an expansion for like $15 that you can buy with some extra stuff, but it's pretty feature complete, and I think it was $40.
Nice.
And I've been playing through the campaign in it, which is surprisingly engaging. It's taking me through some portion of English history where I am a guy and then there's a king, but then I want to be the king, so then knights fight each other for a while, and then now I'm the king, and then this person wants to be the king. I don't know much about English history, so that's like about as much as I can say.
Real royalty issues in real life?
No, it's like real. They show you like actual battlefields where these things occur. Like it's very historically oriented.
Yeah.
And as far as I know, all of the stories it's telling are stories that actually occurred, and it's pretty cool. And I've been enjoying AoE 4 despite not really meshing with AoE 2. Like I played AoE 2 and it was fun.
Yeah.
But I don't think it feels old, but I think I like RTSs that have more modern features that are a little more modern friendly. Because I'm not good at the whole doing lots of actions per minute and prioritizing things, and like I'm not good at them, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Yeah. And AoE 4 is a little kinder to me because I'm very bad at them. So that's been helpful. But yeah, it kind of scratched my RTS itch that I had from not picking up Sins 2. And my plan is to get through. I think they might have multiple campaigns. But to get through some campaigns and then hopefully get into some skirmish modes and enjoy that a little bit more. But it's been fun. I like it. I like the interface on it. It's very modern, very slick. It's kind of interesting because so many. I feel like the like most well-regarded RTS games are not from the last like decade.
Yeah.
So it's nice to play one that is and has like modern features to show for it. So it's pretty cool.
That's good.
But yeah, it's I did have to cap the FPS. My computer was too powerful.
Oh.
It ran it too well, and so the FPS was uncapped, and it was running at like 300 frames per second.
It was playing in the future.
My computer was going into space, like I was playing it, and it was like, hey! And my hand is right by one of the vents. Yeah. And it was like burning my hand. I was like, oh my God. So I had to go limit the FPS to 90.
Yeah, your Steam-powered computer was blowing steam all over your hand.
So that was annoying. But other than that, yeah. What have you been doing, Andrew?
I mean, for me, I've just been doing a lot of Stardew Valley and occasionally playing Apex Legends like I do, and
yeah, it's one of them. They're live service games.
Yeah, new seasons drop, so I can continue to be angry at the game and at EA and
you play the game pretty regularly.
Yeah.
I'd say you're kind of like semi-serious about it. Like you seem to care about it.
I enjoy playing the game.
Well, see, I've never heard you be like, man, Apex is so much fun. You're always just kind of like subtly annoyed at it.
I think the issue that I have, which is I feel like it's just a common problem in life as an adult, which is the more information you know about a subject, the more upset you are.
Right. Okay.
Because you realize that most of the stuff in our
that everything is bullshit.
Yeah, everything's bullshit. So it's like one of the, Apex is a game. It's a free to play game that has microtransactions and season passes.
What's that genre? The with the shrinking
Battle Royale
zone. Battle Royale.
It's a Battle Royale.
It's a Fortnite. Game. It's one of them Fortnites.
They have over the years added non-Battle Royale modes. So they do have like team deathmatch and capture the flag kind of a thing also, but I don't really play those.
Yeah.
I think while I'm playing the game, I enjoy it.
Okay. Yeah. You like the gameplay.
Yeah. I used to like it more because there used to be a mode called, so the standard game is a 3-person team, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I used to have 2 other friends that I played it with, but one of them has kind of dropped off. So it's just me and another friend right now.
Yeah, and then a rando.
Yeah, and there used to be a mode called duos, which was just 2-man teams, so that was fine because there were usually only 2 of us anyway. And they removed that mode for some reason, and then replaced it with quads, which we had been
the opposite.
Yeah, which we had been asking because originally when we started playing there were 4 of us, and it's kind of just dwindled down to me and another guy.
Yeah.
And so every once in a while we're like, hey, we're all in a group chat together still, and we're like, hey, there's a quads mode now. We should all like plan a time to play. And then the other 2 guys are like, okay, and then nothing happens.
Yeah.
But it's just one of those things where, I'm aware how much this game makes. I think I guess I'm not aware. I can't think of the. It's either like, I think it's in the large billions maybe.
Yes,
it makes a shit ton of money.
Let me look. I'm gonna look it up.
How much did Apex Legends make last year?
It says $40 trillion. That seems high? I don't know if that's
is that right?
No, it's not. It's not.
I know they revealed it at 3.4 billion to date is how much it's made.
Oh my gosh! In May 2022, they said it had surpassed 2 billion. Yeah, so it's just on that trajectory. God damn. No wonder people make these fucking games.
Yeah. So it is a free game that has made $3.4 billion since it came out 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah. Free to start game.
Right. Well, I mean, I have the friend that I play with has only spent enough money to buy one battle pass, because if you finish the battle pass, you get enough coins to buy the next battle pass, right? So he has only bought one battle pass, and then he's just played it enough to finish the battle pass that he bought to buy the next one, and he just has continued on that.
If you pay money, then also do a part-time job for free, then maybe you don't have to pay money in the future. Okay,
Right.
yeah, all right, I'm with you. Yeah.
Me, I have, over the last 4 or 5 years, I've spent probably a few $100s on this game.
Yeah.
Just because it is one of the games that I play the most. I enjoy playing it. I have since, stopped spending money on it. But it's just one of those things where there's a shit ton of server issues. There's
General free-to-play game problems.
bug issues. There's cheater issues. There's just regular free-to-play issues that I'm like, and then EA also this year fired a bunch of people from Respawn who make the game.
Yeah, the Titanfall people.
Yeah. So it's just one of those things where it's like, I know you guys have made
Could you bother to fucking care
literally
for just a minute?
Yeah, billions of dollars on this game. Can you please fix the servers? Maybe like
Care.
Just
Just care.
Yeah.
At all.
So
did you kickstart the board game?
no, oh God, no. I saw that, and that's like, there's been several board games on Kickstarter that I've seen that I've been like, oh, that looks interesting, and I'll like say that I'm gonna kickstart it, and then by the end of it, be like, no, I'm not gonna spend money on that. The Apex Legends board game was literally a board game that I saw, and I was like, fucking why?
Because it's the
How?
only version of the game that EA will not eventually take away from you, Andrew. That's
true.
why.
I just
It's
don't.
the only version.
It just looked real dumb.
It funded real fast too. Like, it's coming out. It's being made by Glass Cannon Unplugged,
Yeah.
and it's the same thing, skirmish battles. So I don't fucking know.
Yeah. So I've just been playing that and enjoying it. They recently also, so the battle pass, this is the first season that you have to spend money on the battle pass, as in like you have to buy it in dollars and not used coins. So previously you could just buy Apex coins and then spend those Apex coins on either skins or
So they got rid
battle
of
pass.
the infinite glitch or whatever. Not a glitch, but
yeah, kind of, basically.
Yeah, okay, so fuck for all those people that spent time and money and effort on their game, then I guess.
Yeah, I guess.
Hey, listen, this is all very ethical and fun. The EA lady promised me that. So,
Oh, okay. There's an EA lady?
she can't lie. Yeah, the EA lady said that microtransactions are ethical and fun.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's what I mean.
Let's do the news.
Let's do it. I can't see it, but let's do it.
You do it. You do it.
I don't have access. Okay, news. Yesterday,
Did I never share? I didn't share the notes with you.
No, you only shared.
I guess I did.
starting
You
notes.
You didn't have anything to add to these notes anyway. But now I'm like, oh.
Yesterday,
shit.
Tom Selleck made a brand new game about cars racing on the desert, and he called it Tom Selleck's Mad Max 2 Electric Boogaloo in space.
It's all exactly correct. I did share the link to the notes in the thing so that when we get to patrons, you can help with that. But first up in the news, GameStop is doing some kind of fucking retro game store shit, and I hate them, and I fucking hate that they're doing this.
Oh, I saw that.
It's so stupid. Here's the thing. GameStop, who we know destroyed a bunch of retro game stock.
Yeah, they killed it.
They killed it. They now want to come back and sell us that same shit that's been clogging up their warehouses that for years they were just destroying. I just fuck off, GameStop. It's too late to capitalize on this shit. Your prices are going to be garbage. Your products are garbage. You treat everyone like garbage.
Yeah,
I don't just
might
fuck
as well
off
be
with it.
EA GameStop.
An AI allegedly hallucinated Doom.
Oh,
This was the weirdest headline. First of all, the idea of an AI quote unquote hallucinating anything, I think, is ascribing too much intelligence to any kind of artificial intelligence program.
mm-hmm.
But the whole thing was researchers at Google and Tel Aviv University. They've been working on this thing called Game Engine, like the letter N and then GEN.
Okay.
So it's like engine, but it's InGen. Did you get it?
I got it.
The idea was that it can whole cloth generate using AI games. And so they allegedly told it to make Doom. And it generated a few seconds of the first level of Doom. And they showed that 3-second video to people, and many people couldn't distinguish it from actual Doom. Now, here's the thing. Anyone who's played Doom in the last decade can watch the video and be like, something looks weird about this video. Second of all, nobody was fucking playing the game. And third of all, it's not hallucinating. It's not hallucinating a game of Doom.
Yeah.
It's generating one. It is creating one with its thinky bits. That's what they made it. I don't know. It's basically just like AI generated games. We know that it's coming. We know that a lot of companies are already using AI generated content.
Yeah.
AI is the big buzzword right now until society gets bored of it and corporations get bored of it and we move on to the fucking next thing. That's smell-o-vision or whatever. I don't know.
I can't wait for smell-o-vision.
Like, I think this is... I think it's dumb. I think it has the potential to create a lot of shitty products that nobody likes. And I think that the presentation of this as an AI that can make Doom is completely overblown based on what they've actually shown, which is a 3-second video that looks a lot like the first level of Doom.
Yeah.
So I think everyone just needs to calm down about it.
Do you think,
first of all?
Do you think they'll create AI models to then QA the games that are made by this other AI model?
Yeah, but only so they can lay off all their QA testers.
Right.
Because
I thought they were going to lay off the QA AI model.
Oh, here's a secret. They're all getting laid off anyway.
Right.
And then they're going to retire the AI model and go back to calling it an algorithm.
Right.
Whenever that becomes trendy again. This was very long and I didn't know what any of it was. And the News Goose posted it in the news submissions channel. So I just took the exact quote. So thank you, News Goose. Derek Pascarella of Dreamcast Forever has released a translation patch for the 7-disc Dreamcast exclusive horror film series Birdcage of Horrors. It was made in collaboration between Sega and ASCII Entertainment. The 365 part minute-long episodic series was originally distributed through Sega's Dreamcast Internet Services before being compiled as a complete set later on down the road. This is really cool for preservation, for horror fans, for Dreamcast fans. It's just a really cool project. I don't personally care about it because I don't want to watch something called Birdcage of Horrors. That sounds terrifying. But I'm glad that this preservation exists and is happening.
Is that related to Birdemic?
Yes, the sequel to Birdemic.
Oh, okay.
Right. Well, first was Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds.
Right.
And then there was the remake of The Birds, which was called The Burbs, which had Tom Hanks in it.
Right, yeah.
And then there was,
Well, this would have come before Birdemic.
Right. It was The Burbs with Tom Hanks, which sounds like birds.
Right.
And then Birdemic, and then Birdcage of Horrors. None of this is true.
Birdcage of Horrors would have been first before Birdemic, because Birdemic came out like 15 years ago.
It's okay, fine. Whatever imaginary release order you want to make up for this bit is fine by me.
Okay.
A Croc remaster was announced for sometime this year, coming to all consoles and PC. Remember Croc?
Like the shoes?
What? No, the video game.
Oh, is it about the Crocs shoes?
No, Andrew. It's goddamn.
Yeah, I remember Croc.
Fuck off. So that's cool. It's cool to see Croc again. I'd love to see Croc with like good controls. That would be nice.
I never played it, but yeah. I know what it is.
I played it way later, and it has like tank controls, so it's very hard to go back to. It's kind of early 3D at its mediocrest.
Yeah.
Nintendo has officially run out of replacement parts for 3DS systems, so if you were hoping to get some parts from them, then you fucking can't.
Don't they make them?
Make what? 3DSs?
Parts?
Well, yeah, they make the parts, but they've not made them in a while, and they've now run out of them.
Oh, okay.
They sold their last 3DS nubbin replacement or battery or whatever it was, So
Oh.
that's that. That's just out of them. Clock Tower Rewind has been given a Halloween release date for later this year, which would be very exciting if Saturn was here, but he's not. So you and I can just pretend to be excited about it. Oh man, I fucking love clocks.
I love towers.
Oh, we're gonna be so excited
And
to
Halloween.
rewind Clock Tower. It's gonna be so good.
Oh yeah,
We
you
already
can rewind a clock.
Remedy has found funding partners to fund Control 2 and some kind of like Alan Wake cinematic universe. They say there's going to be like TV shows and movies for Alan Wake, which Saturn would also be very excited about because he loves Alan Wake.
He does.
But he's not here. So Andrew, if you could, go ahead.
Alan
pretend.
Wake. I want to kiss him.
All right, thank you
You're
so
welcome.
much. Banjo-Kazooie is now fully decompiled, so we can expect some PC ports of that coming hopefully soonish. Will be very exciting. Shinji Mikami has stated a desire to remake Sweet Home, the game which inspired Resident Evil. This was a Famicom game. There's fan translations for it. It's a very, very famous horror game on the Famicom that I've not played because it seems spooky.
And it's also
lots of spooky news.
It's also the game version of Sweet Home Alabama.
Yeah. I'm just gonna say yes. It might be. I don't
Justin,
know. I'm not. It's not. I know it's not.
You
but-
realize that we're coming up on October, which is spooky time, right?
is that what it is? I guess. Yeah. I mean, it's still August. It just feels. Early.
I mean, I've talked to several people where spooky time starts in September for them. So
I
they
see.
extend the spooky season to September because they want more spooky.
I see. EmuDeck programmer Dragoon Doris has launched a GoFundMe to produce an EmuDeck dedicated console, which is live on GoFundMe right now. It is basically a Ryzen Zen 48600G that looks suspiciously like a Dreamcast, and it's cute and looks fun. I like the idea of like a device dedicated to EmuDeck and emulators, and that's not just another one of these kind of emulation devices that we're seeing sort of cranked out at high speed from China, which is an exciting idea, kind of a boutique thing. Right now, they've got 58 days left. They're at 17,000 out of 70,000, so 25% funded. So it's going a little slow.
Yeah,
so if it's something you're interested in, then you might look
Give them
into
$60,000. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you give him
The
$60,000.
only option.
And finally, publishing director for Baldur's Gate 3 says games should cost more. There's no cost enough money, Andrew.
It's true. Yeah.
So here's my thing. I'm okay with people charging whatever they want for their games. If you think your game is worth $1 million, charge $1 million for it. I might not pay it because I might not agree with what you think it's worth, but generally that's how selling and purchasing things works, right?
Well, Justin, you don't understand, okay? Games cost a lot of money to make, but they're only $60. So they're only making $60.
$70.
$70. They're only making $70.
Plus your microtransactions and battle passes. And
Well, not for
DLC.
Baldur's Gate 3.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. See, here's the thing. Baldur's Gate 3 is a prime example of a game that maybe they could have charged more. I don't know. I mean, it's a pretty complete package. You know what you're getting up front. If I, I don't know. Like, no one's fucking stopping you from charging more.
Right.
You said it. We didn't do it. Like, you decided we're going to charge this much for this game.
I think the only
Nobody
thing
else.
that would be stopping somebody would be a conscience, which I don't think most publishing directors have. So
Like Baldur's Gate 3 in particular, yeah, I get it. That game was probably real expensive to make. Tons of voice work. It's a gorgeous game. It's very well made. I get it. But the idea that, like, I don't know, like if we could trade and be like, hey, no more predatory bullshit. Nothing has cash shops and microtransactions. We're not going to sell you a $70 game that's basically a free-to-play platform that we're then going to try to trick you into spending more money. What you spend up front is the amount of money you're going to spend, and then we're just going to give you the thing, including patches and updates as necessary for a reasonable amount of time. But hey, we think this game is worth $80.
Oh, I thought you were going to say, but every game is just now Pong.
No, but this game is $80.
Yeah.
I don't know that I'd be that incredibly upset.
I wouldn't.
I might do what?
I said I wouldn't.
Yeah, if they were just like, hey, no more bullshit, but this game costs us a lot to make, so it's going to cost a little bit more to buy.
I'd even say like I'd be personally comfortable with like $100.
I mean, obviously it depends on the title, right?
Not
but
Pong.
like I like
wouldn't.
it's just these bullshit arguments. Like no one is fucking stopping you. No one is. Like Baldur's Gate 3 was a big enough game that it's not like they would have been like, oh, we're not publishing this. We won't release your game because it costs $75. Like that's not.
Well, someone is stopping them, Justin.
Who?
Chortle, the money ghost. He determines how much money.
Why would the money ghost be named Chortle?
It's just his name, Don't.
This is legal. Before he died, he was legally named Chortle?
Yeah.
That's not nice. Who would name a baby that? Who's like, man, what do you want to name your baby? And she's like, Chortle.
Well, the dad lost a bet, so
Chortle sounds like the like fugly, fucked up Squirtle evolution, where you're like, I treated my Squirtle like shit, and it evolved into a Chortle.
Chortle is what you would call like a goofy laugh. Like I don't know if you've ever heard this laugh. It's like, that's a Chortle.
No, I know the definition of Chortle.
Okay.
I'm aware of it.
For anyone else out there that doesn't know.
What does it sound like again? I think that's more of a guffaw.
You think so?
I do think so.
Maybe it's like the marriage between a chortle and a guffaw.
What the fuck is happening? Welcome to the topic.
I'm doing my job, derailing the show.
This week it's a new format. It's a format that I wanted. I've dubbed Learning to Love. And this week we're doing Learning to Love Classic Monster Hunter, because it's like Phantasy Star Online, but with dragons.
Yeah.
Andrew, that's basically it.
For
that's basically what it is.
For full transparency, I did not learn to love it.
Oh,
I didn't know.
Well, maybe I'll convince you.
Yesterday.
Thanks, COVID.
I was given no time to know if I should learn to love it.
I sent you the notes for the show just a moment ago, so yeah, you really had nothing to do with this. As far as scope of this format, the idea here is to discuss a series or title with a difficult introduction or learning curve, maybe something that you like, but you like if someone was like, "Hey, should I play Monster Hunter?" It wouldn't just be a yes. It would be like, yeah, but it's kind of complicated, so let me kind of give you some pointers and make sure you're on the right foot. Otherwise, you can really bounce really hard off of this game, right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of us have games like that in our lives where it's like you really fucking love it. You would love to have more people to play it with. You'd love it if your friends loved it too. But it's just kind of a difficult onboarding process. And there's still a lot there to love, but you kind of got to learn to do it, right? There's a hurdle. As far as first experiences with Monster Hunter, I started on Monster Hunter Tri on the Wii. Was my first Monster Hunter, and I of course graduated through each mainline entry after that. I played 3 Ultimate on 3DS and 4 Ultimate on 3DS and Wii U. Generations Ultimate. I didn't play World. I played like a couple of hours of World, and I was like, I don't like this. It's too different. And then I've put a good amount of time into Rise.
I know. I know that Tri is TRI.
Yeah, Monster Hunter TRY. Monster Hunter Try.
Like they're just like, yeah, try to play it, asshole.
Could you at least fucking try?
Yeah.
The PSP games are kind of a blind spot for me, at least until this episode. I did play them for this episode because I wanted to make good recommendations. And so that's just kind of been my trajectory. I think I was playing it at my most probably in the 4 Ultimate era. And these days I'm still playing a lot of Generations Ultimate, which is what kind of inspired this episode, was me really, really loving Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate, and everyone playing World and Rise and looking forward to the upcoming Monster Hunter Wilds, when I think maybe the best one is this one that you can get for $10 on Switch most days.
Yeah.
So that was kind of my inspiration. Have you what's your history with the series? Because I know I don't know how hard you've tried, but I know you have attempted to play it a few times and kind of bounced off of it, which I think is good. That kind of makes you a prime candidate for this format.
So my experience with this game is I did play the original on the PS2.
I'm sorry.
As we discussed earlier, I remember it being the GameCube for some reason. But
possibly the worst one.
It started with, so I have a friend that is notorious for being like, hey, Andrew, I'm going to play this game. You should buy it and we should play it together.
And then they don't.
And me going, okay. And then I buy it. And then I'm like, when are we going to play? And then they're like, never. I'm like, okay.
Is this when you reveal that I'm that friend?
No, you're not that friend. Though you have done that to me with a Monster Hunter game.
No, I play Monster Hunter.
We did it. It wasn't. I think it was less of you saying, "Hey, let's play this game together," and then us just never actually coordinating when we were going to play together. Like we played once, and then it never happened.
Oh, was that 4 Ultimate on Wii U?
No, it was World. I think we played World. We played one session of World together, and then I was like, "When do you want to play again?" And then it just never happened again.
I don't think I ever played World with you. I think you're making that up.
Is that the one where you have like the airship that you're running around in the regular world in?
You have an airship?
I think there's like a ship that you can run around in the town area. And then
I don't think it was World, but there was one where like you kind of like I was playing with a friend and we were real into it, and you kind of started to play a little bit, but then kind of fell off. Yeah. And I think it was just kind of a scheduling thing where we were playing at this time and you weren't on at that time. And then I think getting in the door without someone holding your hand was kind of a pain in the ass. And
yeah, I think my issue with it is that it is kind of a difficult game. And I honestly have no interest in it unless I'm playing it with someone else.
Yeah, which I'm granted that it's the game to have that.
Which is also what I do with Apex. I don't play Apex Legends by myself. I only play it when one of my friends is on. So
yeah,
but yeah, so I did have Monster World on PS2, and I did play it without that friend because I was like, well, I bought the game and it was expensive, so I'm gonna try to get some fun out of it. And then I played it for a couple hours and was like, I don't know what the fuck's happening, and this sucks. And so I did play that. I played whichever one we played together.
I'm pretty sure. I'm relatively certain it was 4 Ultimate.
And then I played one of the newer ones.
Okay, yeah. Either Rise or World, probably. Probably World. World's been on Game Pass for forever, so that's probably easiest to
Yeah, I played like a couple hours of one of the newer ones, and it's just... I think I don't like the issue for me, I think, is there's no real story, I guess, to hook me. Yeah. And so like I get in the game and I'm like, all right, what are we doing? And you're like, okay, so what you want to do is you want to go fight this creature to get his scales to make a suit of armor. And I'm like, okay. And I go do that. And I'm like, now it's
now you have the armor.
Now what's the next thing? And you're like,
bigger monsters.
Well, now we go kill this monster and get
with your
new
armor.
And then we make more armor out of that.
I think this does bring us to kind of the first section of this format for me, which is hurdles to overcome. Yeah. These are just kind of the parts of the game. These are what make it difficult to get into. And you just kind of have to overcome or be okay with them. So I think by the time, for anyone out there that hasn't played Monster Hunter, by the time I get through the hurdles, you'll either know this is something where like, hey, maybe I can try to overcome those things. That doesn't sound too bad. Or you'll be like, nah, fuck that. I'm not going to fucking do any of this shit.
Yeah.
And the first hurdle is under my gameplay stuff section, which is the grind. To begin with, you are dealing with MMO-style drop rates on items. There is a lot of item farming. And there's that thing when you've killed 100 of a thing with a 20% drop rate and still not gotten the drop, that's here, right? At higher levels, occasionally you'll be dealing with stuff with real low drop rates. It's very kind of MMO-like in that regard. The other big gameplay hurdle to overcome is motivation. The motivation in the game comes in the form of broad progression, right? Bar go up. You do not gain character levels.
Yeah.
You only gain access to stronger fights as you increase your hunter rank, but that has nothing to do with your actual abilities. All gameplay related progression in the entire game is done via equipment, right? So you don't like gain a level and you're now level 2, now you have more health or whatever. It's all done through items and through equipment. So the entire drive of the game is this constant grind of, it's sort of a grind and then equilibrium thing, right? So if you're playing smart, usually you'll be like, all right, I kind of want to play this weapon, and this is kind of how I like to play. And then you'll go do some research and be like, all right, what is a good weapon and armor combo for that play style? And then you'll go grind out that weapon and armor combo, and then you'll have a general idea of how far in the game that's going to take you before you should start maybe looking at your next weapon and armor upgrade, right?
Yeah.
And there is a story. A story does exist within the game. There are occasionally cutscenes. Rise and World. I should delineate these up front. When I say classic Monster Hunter, I mean everything Generations Ultimate and backward, because World and Rise were very dramatic shifts in the gameplay and the style of Monster Hunter. And thankfully also in the accessibility. They are much more accessible titles to play. But they are, at least in my mind, and I know in the mind of a lot of other Monster Hunter fans, distinctly different games. And so when I say classic Monster, I mean everything except Rise and World. And presumably the upcoming Wilds, which is when the series... So if you're just like, hey, I want to play a Monster Hunter... Rise and World are pretty accessible. Like they're not nearly as opaque. They have a lot less of these hurdles. This hurdle does exist in those games. Most of the progression and the motivation to move forward is just fighting the stronger stuff, and getting better equipment and finding cool rare gear and getting rare drops. And the motivation for me is doing those really tough hunts. Does create, there have been some memorable hunts, and these moments that are created whenever you're hunting these monsters, and it's like there's a variable level to the monsters, right? So some monsters aren't the same every time. They're different sizes, they have different health, even when it's the same monster multiple times. So very occasionally things will just go wrong, right?
Yeah.
And you'll have these really tense, memorable, fun hunts with other people. And those are the moments I'm usually chasing, right? So that's the motivation for me. Like, yes, I want to get stronger and raise my hunter rank and get better gear and everything, but that's all in service of having cool experiences with people, right? But the story is very much stuff like, hey, this big dragon thing's attacking the town. We don't like that. Could you get us some ore? And you're like, okay.
Our next D&D game, can you have a dragon attack a town and the people in the town are just like, we don't really like it. Could you?
This isn't good. I don't like that at all. Could you we need herbs.
Just apathetic about
some herbs. And it's mostly delivered via in-town dialogue boxes. It's not a riveting story. You don't there is some interesting nuance in like the broad mythos of Monster Hunter. But it ain't delivered via engaging story moments, right?
Right.
So yeah, you do have to kind of overcome the idea of like, there's some grinding. A lot of the game is cyclical. It's very much a cycle of acquire new gear, let that float you through this many fights, start thinking about your next upgrades, begin accruing items for those next upgrades. It's sort of this cycle you get in, and as it goes on, you get better at it. You get better access to different materials. You find different ways to get different materials, and it changes a little bit, but it's that same cycle, right?
Yeah.
The other big hurdle is information, and I think this is a thing you experienced where like the game doesn't tell you a lot.
Yeah, it tells you nothing.
Third-party information sources are basically required. There's a big website called Kiraniko, which is a big, giant Monster Hunter database for many of the games. But at the same time, this game has so much data dedicated to it that it can be a little disorienting to new players. Like, just pulling Kiraniko up with it's just like looking at a bunch of spreadsheets, and you're like, I'm supposed to fucking figure out how to kill monsters from this?
Yes.
It causes you to, I think, hit information roadblocks. Sometimes, like you'll literally just not know what something means or what it does, and you'll talk to other players to be like, "Hey, what do I do as like a super new player?" And they'll be like, "Oh, do this," and you're like, "I don't how." It's
Yeah.
it's very similar to MMO stuff. For anyone that's ever like gotten into an MMO and you're really early in the game and you're like, "Hey, how do I like increase this skill?" And then they tell you what to do and you're like, "I don't even know what you're saying. I don't understand."
Yeah.
And as you're saying, the game does have poor in-game onboarding. It does have tutorials and information on how to play, but it's just like control schemes. There's virtually nothing in the form of real strategy for weapons or monsters.
Yeah.
You get little tidbits and hints here and there, but you're kind of left to discover, or more accurately, Google this information on your own. A resource I really love is a user wrote up these guides called Yet Another Weapon Guide. And so once you find a weapon you like, you can be like, hey, go to Google and type Yet Another Weapon Guide, great sword or a gun lance or whatever weapon you decide on. And it's a big guide of just like, hey, this is kind of how the gun lance works. These are all the different maneuvers you can do with it. And here's some recommended gun lances to craft and play with, and how long you'll kind of get to play with them before you might want to think about upgrading. And it's just a really good practical guide. But the game doesn't have that. None of the classic Monster Hunter games have that. And they're just like, here's the tutorial. You hit this button to swing the sword. And you're like, that's great, but I need strategy, because these are very much games about strategy, about animation frames, games about preparation, having the correct items and equipment in the correct moment.
Knowing when to dodge based on tells that the monsters have.
Yes. And in that regard, it's very much, I've always compared Monster Hunter to tournament fighting games.
Oh.
Because it's a lot of, much like in a tournament fighting game, like you come in the front door and you don't even know what anybody's saying. And when you try to play, you get beat so soundly that you're like, I don't even know what I was supposed to do.
I think I've always compared it to like a Souls-like. Because it's basically you fighting bosses and dodging and blocking and attacking.
I can see the comparison, but unlike Souls games, I know you can get crazy in Souls games. Souls games pretty regularly feel always threatening to me, almost all the way through. In Monster Hunter, the threat that I feel plummets immensely as I become more adept at the game and get better equipment and stuff. And there's this kind of opposite curve that occurs.
Maybe that's why I'm making the comparison, because I've never liked. I've tried to play several Souls games, and I am not the type of person. Whenever I think I asked you or I asked another friend, I was like, "Hey, like, how do I get better at this?" And you were like, somebody was just like, "Get good." Basically, and I
don't think I would have just said that. I would have given you a real answer, because I like Dark Souls games.
But I basically was just like, I don't want to, like, I don't want like a chore. I play video games for not the chore, like, and that's kind of what Monster Hunter has felt to me was, I'm not good at it.
No, I it's always been a fighting game thing for me for a couple of reasons. One, the game is very much about like animation. Because your moves, like, it's about committing, right? Whenever you hit a button, you're committing to that animation, and the animation frames matter and interact with the monsters. So you need to be aware before you hit a button of like, hey, is this a really long, slow attack that I'm about to do? And if so, much like in a fighting game where you're like, hey, I'm about to do this, what are they doing? Do I have time to get my thing off before they come hit me with their fucking fire sword tail or whatever shit, monster you're fighting?
Yeah.
It's also a game where you very much need to learn your character. Like, if you're playing Street Fighter and you're like, hey, how do I get good at playing Ken? I'd be like, well, learn Ken. Like, go look up Ken strategies and be like, hey, how do I become a good Ken player? Like, same thing for Monster Hunter.
You would say, play Ryu.
I would say that. But if you're like, hey, how do I get good at Monster Hunter? My first question would be, well, what weapon do you like playing with? And if you're like, oh, I like the insect glaive, I'd be like, well, go learn how to be a good insect glaive player.
Yeah.
And the way you play insect glaive is completely different from the way you play, greatsword or switch axe or whatever.
Right.
And it's very much like that. In fighting games, changing characters can sometimes feel like you're playing a totally different game. The strategies are different. Your moveset is different. Everything changes. And you need to kind of relearn the basics, your animations. How does this stuff interact with other animations that are happening within the game? It's a lot like fighting games in that regard. You also start to learn like dodging and hitboxes and stuff. But what I like about it is because Monster Hunter is such a cooperative experience that there is no competitive mode. You're always playing cooperatively. It means that people are invested in bolstering one another, in teaching other people, in making each other better at the game, instead of this kind of competitive nature that you see. I mean, granted, a lot of the fighting game community is very, very, very helpful and kind and stuff, but if you're about to have a match with someone, you're probably not going to be like, hey, you should do these things to beat me. It'll be a lot better for you.
Yeah.
The game has poor in-game onboarding. Things like there's like a bajillion status effects in the game. I still have to Google status effects because there's so fucking many. The skill system is kind of confusing and takes a long time to understand because it's weird. Like, if you put on a piece of gear that says attack up +2, you would rightly assume that increases your attack by 2, right?
Sure.
That makes sense, but it doesn't, Andrew. It contributes 2 to the attack up skill.
Oh.
And you don't gain the attack up skill. It's not active until you have at least 10 points in it.
Oh.
And then you gain the attack up small skill, which you can scale up at 15 points and 20 points. But nowhere in between, and past that, it does nothing. And the game
I'm frowning.
does probably... Are you frowning?
I'm frowning.
The game probably does explain that. But again, a lot of the game's information is just kind of delivered in text box form.
Yeah.
And it can be disorienting. There is a skill barrier. I've never felt like it's a series of constant skill barriers like Dark Souls. A lot of it is, again, it feels very fighting game. Like monsters have kind of classes, right? So like, if you fight a Rathalos, it's going to be kind of similar to fighting a Rathian. And a lot of the stuff that you learn fighting one of them will apply to another one, except different ways in which it shakes things up, right? The same way that if you're playing a fighting game against Ken and then you have to fight Ryu, well, a lot of the same stuff applies because they have a lot of the same moves, but they are subtly different, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there are some skill road bumps that you have to overcome at certain intervals. They're eventually in the game, you need to learn how to get good at rolling out of the way when you see monsters about to attack and stuff.
Yeah.
Monsters will do tricky things where they always telegraph their attacks. So if you're just good at learning patterns, I mean, you'll just probably have a much easier time than me because I'm very bad at it. But you'll start to learn like, hey, this monster, like I can tell, they curl their tail in and they lean forward and they're going to do like a hip check. Yeah. And I know that I can't side dodge that because they're real wide when they do that. Just little things like that you start to learn. There are certain monsters that you'll just naturally have a tough time with. Like I have really, really hard times. My struggle right now is this creature called a Glavenus. It's a T-Rex with a sword tail that is made of metal that he drags through his teeth that makes it light on fire.
Oh.
And I struggle so hard to fight this thing because he's real fucking wide and I always side dodge and I need to learn to forward dodge under his shit.
Yeah.
And so it's a lot about like learning your space. How much distance do I have? It's very fighting game-esque in that regard. And I feel like that's all I have in the hurdles section. I feel like these are the biggest hurdles is just knowing what the fuck is happening, being okay with the grind, and understanding that, again, I don't think it has the same kind of skill barrier as something like Dark Souls. Like, I just don't. Monster Hunter has a lot of chill moments where you can just kind of go grind out some gear and figure some stuff out and get better equipment and then go tackle something. There's also moments where you're like, hey, I'm having a really hard time with this specific monster or this specific moment in a fight. and you can just look up that monster, see what's good against them, and make gear specifically to kill that one fucking monster that you're struggling with.
Yeah.
And it does. There are ways to grind out the difficulty, to do some grinding and overcome instead of just, getting good or whatever.
Yeah.
My next section is why it's worth overcoming. I do think Monster Hunter is a wonderful online community. Like I said, the game is fully cooperative, and it kind of bleeds into this general spirit of like everyone is here to help one another. There's no reason for you to not be as helpful as possible to everyone around you, because they're the people going on hunts with you, and if they're shitty or fucking die or whatever, then it hurts you too.
Yeah.
Anytime I get online and I start a lobby and I'm like, hey, looking to raise HR or whatever, a level bajillion person always joins and helps me and runs around with us, and it's just generally nice and helpful. I also think because the game has a small lobby size, like there's only 4 players per lobby, it does seem to keep hostility in general in check. Like when there's only 2 or 3 people around, people seem less likely to be assholes to one another.
Yeah.
And I do really like the game is a wonderful mixture of extremely tense fights and being really chill. Like a lot of the game is focused around like farming materials. You can go on gathering quests where you literally just walk around and pick flowers and ore and shit. And if a monster shows up, you just run away and go somewhere else. And so there's a lot of the game that's just sort of gathering and running around and having these chill moments and eating food at town and combining items. And I like that stuff. Well, it's enjoyable to me.
One of my issues is that cats make all the food that you eat. And
yes, the food is all made by cats,
which is
but they're not actually.
It's not sanitary.
Well, they wipe their paws when they leave the litter box, and then they make your food. So yeah. I do. The game does have some really amazing monster fights. I mean, most of the game is boss fights, so of course it's gonna have some cool ones. But there are some really, really memorable fights. You'll come to, as you play the game, really enjoy fighting certain monsters. Like, it'll just be a good matchup for whatever you got going on. And that's really satisfying. I think the game also gives really cool consideration to like ecology and verisimilitude and the plausibility of environments and monsters within the context of the world. Like the game actually cares about the ecology and like where these monsters come from and what do they eat and what are their habits like.
Right.
They're not just like, oh, it's a magical dragon made by a wizard. Like there is actual thought that goes into like, how would these dragon creatures live, which is kind of cool. And I know that this is going to be a deal breaker for some, but I like that there's no character specific progression. There's no levels. Like at any point in time, I can completely change up my gear, and that will change up my everything, my moveset, my power level, everything. And I like that. I like not ever feeling locked into like a class or a build or anything like that. I can at any moment be like, hey, I do the fucking the hammer now. That's me. I'm a hammer main. I'm gonna go make a big hammer. Now I hit things with a hammer, and that's all I fucking do.
Yeah.
And I enjoy that. I hate the feeling of like, oh, I've built this thing and it's like maybe I don't love it or maybe I want to try something else, and I enjoy being able to break out of that sort of thing,
Yeah.
Andrew.
I do.
Saying to you?
I know. I mean, when I played, I did try like multiple weapons to try to see what I liked.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do understand being able to change it up a little bit.
So here's how I want to do this. I want to give general tips for people that you've listened to this and you're like, all right, Justin, I'll go try a game. What should I, other than keeping these barriers in mind and hurdles I'm going to have to overcome?
Yeah.
How do I, what are some tips? First up, just like a fighting game, learn to use your weapon. Your weapon is your character. That is the kind of character you're playing. You don't have to like get in every fucking thing, but just like look up some basic like, hey, I'm playing the sword and shield thing, the little blade. Right. Go look up some tips for how to play that. Just watch a 10-minute video, get a basic idea of how it works, and then jump in. Rely on others. The single player mode of the game is kind of tuned to single hunter expeditions. In a lot of the games, you can also take palicos with you, which are little cats that you can dress up in various armors with weapons. But the multiplayer hub, which every game has, is an entirely different progression, and the monsters there are tuned to 2+ hunters. And so you can hunt solo in the multiplayer hub, but more is always better. Again, the game is always cooperative. So just kind of learn to work with, rely on, ask for help from other players. Otherwise, the roadblocks are going to be tougher to overcome.
Yeah.
Right? Be helpful to other people. It's kind of expected in the game that, like, when you aren't high ranks just looking to help people out, you take turns picking quests, doing round robin quests. Like, everyone does a quest and you get whatever thing you need, and you say, hey, does anyone need anything else, and then let them go pick a quest. Take breaks to train your palicos, gather items, grind weaker monsters. Like, the game is not all the strongest boss fight you can possibly find. And I think sometimes always having that available in front of you as, like, this is the next thing you have to eventually do makes some people just go bash their head against it.
Yeah.
Instead of just like, oh, let me just go get better and stronger and do some other stuff and have some fun before going to the next strongest monster I can possibly fight and smashing my fucking face into it over and over again.
Right.
And I would also say, again, if you're struggling with a specific monster or fight, look that monster up. Figure out what its weakness is. Like, there's plenty of times where I'm like, oh, I fucking hate fighting, plesioths. I fucking hate them. If I'm fighting a plesioth, I'm going to go look up what they're weak to, and I'm going to show up with a weapon specifically to kill that fucking asshole because I hate it. Starting recommendations. The classic Monster Hunter franchise is kind of weird and confusing. And I'm going to recommend games in order from most recommended to least recommended here. I don't recommend the original PS2 game.
You don't?
Don't go there.
Oh.
But I'm going to talk more about that in a minute. My number one recommendation is the newest, most recent classic Monster Hunter, which is Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate. It has an insane amount of content. There's something like 96 monsters, which is basically 96 boss fights in the game. It's the most recent. It's the most active. It still has active servers. It's on Switch. It has active players. There's an active community. It's often on sale for $9.99. The only real downside to this version is that it is very much a celebration of the previous Monster Hunter games, right? So the 4 games that came before it, this is like it's like a greatest hits from those previous 4 games jammed into one game.
Okay.
And so if you're like, hey, this is where I start, you may not get some of the references and in jokes and recurring characters, stuff that if you started from the very first game, you're like, oh, I remember this. This was the village from the first game. That was the blacksmith from the third game. Oh, this is cool. Like, you kind of miss out on that sort of celebratory aspect of it.
Yeah.
I don't think it really detracts from the experience. But I do think that some people might be like, hey, why is there 4 villages I can rotate between? Well, it's because it's the 4 villages from the 4 previous games, right? It's all 4 of them jammed into one fucking game. So if you're like, hey, I hate missing out on celebration style stuff like that, that might bother you a little bit, but I don't think it detracts from anything. It is itself an enhanced port of Monster Hunter Generations XX, which was in turn an expanded version of Monster Hunter Generations. These were 3DS games. I don't see any reason to go back to the 3DS versions of Generations, but you can transfer your character to Generations Ultimate if you do go that path. But MHGU is just kind of the easiest to purchase and start playing both online and off due to the Switch still being active. It includes a Prowler mode, which is, I don't want to call it easy mode, but it kind of is easy mode where you get to play as just a cat and you can bring some other cats with you. And it removes the stamina bar, so you don't have to manage your stamina at all. You get infinitely reusable items. You get to be a cat and do cat things and make cat noises. It's just a really cute, fun. Like, my daughter plays that version of the game, and you can play through the whole game this way. Even online, you can go online and go into online lobbies as a fucking cat and go on hunts as cats. People do it. So, like, if you're just like, hey, I just want the easiest version of Monster Hunter, Prowler mode, and you get to be a cat. And I when I saw that they included it, I assumed it was special where you could only do certain things.
Yeah.
It's actually the opposite. Some content you have to be in Prowler mode to experience. There are Prowler mode exclusive quests, but again, you can still go do any old quest. You can go fight a big giant fucking elder dragon as a cat if you want to.
Yeah.
And it's fun. The movesets are also a lot simplified. It is just easily the most palatable, content-rich, expansive title ever made in the classic Monster Hunter series, and it is also the last one in the classic Monster Hunter series, so it makes sense that it is that. Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate and 4 Ultimate on 3DS. These are very good games. They're very fun. You still have local multiplayer, but the online is not functional thanks to Nintendo. So if you have a 3DS and a friend that's maybe going to play with you, it could be a good way to get into the game. They're still very fun, very playable versions of the game. And still pretty affordable and also really easy to emulate on a hacked 3DS. So like if you and your friend both have hacked 3DSs, totally like fire up some 3 Ultimate or 4 Ultimate. A lot of their content is wrapped up in Generations Ultimate because again, it's a celebratory title.
Yeah.
But it might just be the path of least resistance for some people out there. And then we get to the PSP games. Specifically Monster Hunter Freedom Unite on PSP. And so this is where it gets confusing. So this is an expanded port of Freedom Unite 2, which is an expanded port of Freedom 2, which was a sequel to Freedom, which was itself a port of Monster Hunter G, which was itself a port of the original PS2 Monster Hunter. Did you get all that?
I've just been shaking my head while you explained all that.
So there's 2 PSP games in America. There's Monster Hunter Freedom and Monster Hunter Freedom Unite.
Mm-hmm.
Freedom Unite is not a better version of Freedom. It's the sequel to Freedom, right?
Okay.
And much like the 3DS games, this one is easy to emulate both on a hacked PSP and PPSSPP if you have, if you're going to emulate through there. And it's pretty easy to get others playing with you because of local multiplayer. It definitely feels the oldest of this recommendation list. But thankfully, Monster Hunter has been pretty well realized since the very beginning. So I think the core here is still solid. But if you've really bounced really hard off of later games in the franchise, I think this one's going to be even tougher to love.
Okay.
But I mention it because it is very beloved, and I know a lot of people really like going back to the very beginning of a franchise, and they insist on struggling through the early stuff. Monster Hunter Freedom is a remake of the first Monster Hunter. It's real tough to get into. It's really hard. It's really unforgiving. It's missing some things like indicators that you can interact with stuff. It's like in Monster Hunter, if you walk up to a flower that you can harvest, a little icon pops up and tells you to press A, right?
Mm-hmm.
The first Monster Hunter didn't have that, nor did Monster Hunter Freedom. So, like, you just kind of walk around the game pressing A a lot, not really sure what you can and can't interact with.
Ew.
The small monsters in the zones are really aggressive and numerous. It's just, like, it's the same core. It's there, but it's real tough.
But it's gross.
I think it's gross. I think as early as I would go would be Freedom Unite on PSP. What I would specifically recommend is playing that on Vita if you have it as an option, because you'll remember, of course, the PSP only had one stick.
Mm-hmm.
So your camera controls were your D-pad, so you couldn't move the camera and your character at the same time.
Oh.
So it had a camera centering button, which is still useful. I still use it even on my Switch version of the game because I'll lock onto the monster and it centers my camera on them. But on Vita, you can map the right stick to the D-pad, so you can basically give yourself regular camera controls.
Oh.
So for those of you in the explicit niche of having a hacked Vita and wanting to get into the classic Monster Hunter games and insisting on starting as early as you can,
Mm-hmm.
the Vita might be the place to go for specifically that one person.
Yeah.
For
Great.
them individually. So yeah, that's it. The only other thing I have here is resources. Cure Nico is kind of the default source for Monster Hunter stuff. The Monster Hunter Reddit is very useful. A lot of information is kind of siloed into there. I actually like two things. One, IGN has made guides for many Monster Hunter games, and their guides are real good for newbies because they don't include giant spreadsheets of information because you don't really need it to just kind of play through the game.
Yeah.
And so it's just a lot less information to parse. Also, if you're on Android, there's an app called MHGU Database. Now, this is only for Generations Ultimate, but it is a wonderful, fantastic application that's extremely easy to navigate and steps you through everything in MHGU if that's the version that you kind of start the game with. And I really think it's a great version of the game to start the game with. And you should do that.
Nice.
The end.
Just how I used to finish all my essays in high school.
500-word essay, and I have 498 words. The end.
I only did that once, and it was during one of the things where you had to write an essay like in class, like you had like the whole period to write your essay, and like the teacher said like pencils down basically, and I wasn't finished, but like mid-sentence I just put the end
The
turned
end?
it in, and he like came to me after he graded it and he was like, was this a joke like at the end here? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, okay, well I still gave you a C or whatever because I saw what you were trying to get to, but he was like, don't
Should
ever.
have just been like, no, I was serious.
He was like, don't ever do this again, please. Just,
Oh my God, what an ass.
well, he was just like, just don't write the end. Just like, don't have it finished.
Fuck him, that's funny. Fuck that teacher. Asshole. Anyway, that's Monster Hunter. I've been putting a lot of time into MHGU lately, and I just kind of wanted to gush about classic Monster Hunter.
Yeah.
And wish that more, like I know that everyone loves World and Rise and Wilds is coming out. Everybody likes the new stuff, but just like, oh man, MHGU is like, it's on sale for like $9 all the fucking time.
Yeah.
And it has 4 times the amount of content of any of the newer games. It's just so fun. Just so much shit crammed in there, Andrew.
Yeah.
And I get to be a cat. What I've done is my daughter, because she likes playing the Prowler mode to be a Palico.
Mm-hmm.
And so whenever I need to do gathering missions, I make her do it. So I'll be like, yeah, just go to this map and gather everything you can find. And she's like, sweet.
So child labor.
No, well, I mean, okay. It's a bonding experience because I
okay.
check in on her every once in a while to make sure she's getting me enough ore.
Right. Just like a foreman would check in on the children in a factory.
And if she's not, I'm like, well, you're grounded if you don't give me enough Dragonite ore. 'Cause
Right.
I got armor to craft, so just get your
I'm gonna
fucking shit
dock your
together.
20-cent wages. Don't work harder.
So I don't know. Hopefully, some people that maybe kind of tried it and couldn't figure it out or bounced off of it, or you know, I've always kind of been interested. Will try the game. I love classic Monster Hunter. It is, I don't know. It is kind of a taste you have to acquire.
Yeah.
You know, it takes a little bit of effort, a little bit of kind of scratching beneath the surface and sort of digging into it. But if Phantasy Star Online, but with dragons, is not exciting to you, then, well, you know, fuck you.
I remembered something while you were
What?
talking about all of this.
Yes, tell me.
A couple years ago, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, there was a free-to-play battle royale style Monster Hunter game that came out.
Oh, is that the mobile one?
No, it was on like Xbox. Like,
What?
and I played a shit ton of that and loved it, but it's because it like cut all of the, like, it was still the same. Like at the end of the day, it was still like fight monsters, collect stuff, build more armor, go fight more monsters, right?
Right. Yeah.
That was still the base game, but they cut out all of like the bullshit I hated.
Okay.
So like,
What bullshit do you hate? Because maybe I can recommend a mode or game that is closest
I mean,
to that.
it sounds like the cat mode would be kind of the closest, I guess.
Like straight up, if you were like, hey, I want to play through MHGU exclusively in Prowler mode, I would totally do Prowler mode with you. That would be fun as shit. But honestly, you could just be a cat and I just be my regular dude. Like, it doesn't fucking matter.
I think,
you know?
I think the thing that I enjoyed was that there was no like stalking the monster. Like it ran away from you at one point in this game, but you could basically find it real easy. But otherwise, it was just like you go into the area where their monster is, and there it is, and you just start attacking it, and then like. So I think it was just like the time
well, that's another
aspect.
thing. Prowler mode has this thing where you always see the monster on the map, like it's because like in classic Monster Hunter, you have to throw a paintball at it to mark it so you can see it on the map, right? So, well, I don't actually hunt them. I just look on my MHGU app to see where they spawn at, and then I do the quest and I go straight there. But in Prowler mode, it's kind of, I mean, it doesn't start you there, but it shows you where they are at all times. So.
But I think my point was that non-Monster Hunter game was the closest that I ever got to enjoying a Monster Hunter game.
I mean, it's a compelling core.
Yeah.
It's just, it is the tedium and the grind too much for you, you know?
Yeah, I think the tedium and the grind is
I think there's
the more you I don't want to discourage you from the topic, but the more you talked about it this entire episode, the more I'm like, I don't want to play this game.
Oh, maybe it'll have the opposite effect on everyone, and I've just done a terrible disservice to one of my favorite game franchises.
I don't think so. I think, there's people out there that that are looking for that. And I think, like I explained at the beginning of the game, I'm not like, I don't generally play games to as last episode, we talked about a game where all it is you doing chores.
Yeah.
So I guess I do like doing chores, but maybe I'm just picky about the chores I like doing.
I think even I have moments where, like right now, like I've just hit high rank. I'm doing high rank stuff. I'm a little ways in the high rank in both Village and the online hub, and I'm kind of reaching a point where I'm like, I really probably should upgrade to some high rank armor. I'm still in low rank stuff.
Yeah,
and like I don't wanna have to go pick one and then figure it out and then figure out what quest I need to do the shit and then whatever. So I'm just not.
I think maybe you can answer something that you didn't answer during this episode for me. A question that I have, which is after, I have a newish job. And so a lot of the gameplay that I do are games that I can kind of just pick up and put down whenever I want.
Sure.
And I from previous experience with Monster Hunter, and maybe you can answer that, is it just feels like it's not a game that I can like pause mid hunt and then come back to later.
You can. Yeah.
Oh, you can?
Yeah, you can go to pause, at least in MHGU. Now you have to open the start menu and then select pause because the start menu has a bunch of options, but there's a pause. Also on Switch, you can just put it in sleep mode. So,
well, I mean, not when I'm in a party with real humans doing.
Well, I mean, yeah, but that's true of any multiplayer game. Like if you might have to. Now, I will say one thing I do like about it is that hunts are limited to 50 minutes. Okay. So, like, no matter what you're doing, as long as you have an hour, you got time to do it.
Okay.
Now, granted, like most hunts, I mean, I'm done in 15 minutes, maybe.
I guess that was my question, is I just remember hunts lasting a while.
So they have a 50-minute timer. So no matter what, what I like about the 50 minutes as opposed to an hour is you're going to be done with 10 minutes to spare to go do whatever, like crafting or other shit that you need to do. Period. Like if you have an hour to play Monster Hunter, you have an hour to actively get something useful done. You have enough time. Period. Like unless you just fail the quest, I guess, it just die 3 times and then get bounced out,
which I've done before.
Yeah, sure. I mean, we've all been there, But there is a pause mode on Switch. You can just hit the button and it just goes into sleep mode. Obviously, if you're playing actively online with other people and you put your system into sleep mode or pause it, then that's going to cause problems. But yeah, I think that's just true of every online game.
Then you just fade away like Marty McFly.
So it's one of those things where it's like, I play it in these bursts because I'll be like, all right, I got an hour to kill. I know I can get, if I'm doing good, 2 or 3 hunts done, but I know it's enough time,
Yeah.
Okay. And so I think that's the thing I like about it. I also like that it has that kind of MMO feel where like I'm playing online with other people and we're grinding and doing stuff, but I don't have to keep up with the game.
Yeah.
Like in MMOs, it's like, oh, you're wearing that gear? That's last season's gear. That's old shit. That's this. That's whatever. In Monster Hunter, like, my Rathalos armor is good. It's been good since the game came out. It's still good now, at least through low rank and early high rank. It's good armor. I don't have to worry about logging in and suddenly my shit is deprecated, but I get to have that kind of online cooperative experience without having to, like, keep up with something, which is nice.
Okay.
Well, I'm glad I could deter you from ever playing Monster Hunter.
Thank you.
Anyway, what I don't want to deter anyone from is going to our Patreon at patreon.com/Retro Warriors, where you can get the Talking Wizards and the other shows and stuff.
Yeah.
Thanks.
You don't even need a guide to access it.
You don't need a guide. I guess you do need me to tell you that it's there.
Yeah. But you don't need a guide.
But then other than that,
yeah.
other than that, now you know you've been guided there. So please attend the website.
Yay.
We want to thank the following patrons, starting with Dave Nelson,
Grover and Simba.
David DeAndrea,
The Games That Made Us Podcast.
Brian Guido Hassin,
Brian Kim.
Domingo Carlo Martinez,
Casey McGinty.
Abe Lincoln,
And Charles G.
are all humans.
Maybe?
Because you can't subscribe to Patreon if you're not a human. It's in their terms of service.
Could be a robot.
So no, you can't. That's in the rules. You got to be a person.
Could be a Bicentennial Man style robot.
Well, but by the end, he was granted personhood, so is legally a human.
But he started a robot.
Right, it was started as a robot, but by the end of the movie, they granted him humanity they gave him a certificate and everything, Andrew.
Oh.
They got... Who do you think fucking wrote up that certificate? Like, they're just like, hey, we need you to write up a certificate of humanity. He's like, what the fuck does that mean?
Probably like an 8-year-old printed it
just
out.
write like, you are a human, and then like sign it and put a star on it and shit. And it's like, no, I'm not
just,
fucking,
you
what
know,
does that even...
You know, when you're 8 and you like pass a math video game and you get like a little certificate that's like, you know
you
math.
can print it out. Yeah. You know math. You know all the math, little Timmy.
It was basically it.
All of it.
It was probably
Anyone that tries to teach you more math is a heretic.
honestly, it was probably an AI generated certificate.
Yeah, probably was.
Yeah.
Probably was. Anyway, thanks for listening. We'll be back next week. And as always,
Let us cling together.